I'm Dr. Michelle Rozen, and this is Stacey Aries here with me, Head of Talent Management at Citizens Bank. Welcome, Stacey. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you so much. I was excited about the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to having a lot of fun dialogue with you, because anytime we get together, we kind of can't keep quiet.
I know.
So here we go again.
And we are certainly not going to keep quiet today. So today, Stacey and I are here to talk about unlocking talent potential, 5 keys to amplify your leadership. Can you think about anything more important these days, Stacey?
No, I think, all roads lead to 2 things, I always say: leadership and talent. And they're inextricably linked, right? You can't have
Yes.
one without the other. And yeah.
100%. 100%. And you and I talked about 5 keys, and we'll talk about them today. We talked about inspire, declare, ask, enable, and connect. You came up with those, and I love them. And I said, Stacey, we have to bring all that great information to leaders these days because, you and I went over some statistics, and we talked about some statistics. You had a shocking statistic for me that I want you to share with everyone. Tell me what it was, because it blew my mind.
Yeah, 78% of colleagues that left their organizations in the last probably 2 years. I'm going to not remember the exact time frame, but generally during this whole great reshuffle, left
Yeah.
because of lack of career opportunities.
How
So
painful
that's
is
just
that?
astounding. And then you joked with me, and you're like, "Ha, right back at you."
Right back at you.
And I was like, "Bring it on."
Right back at you. I also have a very alarming statistic, and what I shared was that a whooping 79%, everyone, of employees will quit their job due to lack of appreciation from leaders. And I have to share with you, Stacey, that a lot of times, I work with different industries, right? So I talk to different types of leaders in different industries. Everybody has their own, unique challenges. But the issue of lack of attention to the soft skills, which is a huge shift, is something that I find to be very problematic, because there are some outstanding leaders out there when it comes to professionalism and wisdom and, technical skills and vision and strategy. But when it comes to saying to someone, hey, Joe, you did a really great job on that project, somehow that falls right through the cracks. What do you think about that? Or, hey, Joe, I found this great career opportunity for you. Why don't you take this training or this class or, explore these options or mentorship, whatever? What do you think about that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, the whole connection to people on a personal level has never been more important. And it's taking the time to both understand what's important to them, right, from a career
Mhm.
perspective,
Yeah.
that first stat.
Yeah.
And then also in terms of, recognizing and looking for those moments that really you can appreciate not only what they've delivered, but how they've gone about it. And not all recognition is created equal. So for some folks, it's hey, just, give me an attaboy or attagirl.
Yeah.
And then for other folks, they want to be able to, right, have a seat at the table,
Yeah.
or, showcase what they're doing, or really get the next opportunity. That's a way to recognize their contribution, right?
Yeah.
Bring me into the conversation more. So it's not a one size fits all. And, that recognition piece, you're never done with it either, right?
Yeah.
Appreciation and recognition don't go out of style.
Never go out of style. And, the mind is very geared towards the negative. And I always say this comes from ancient times, for
Mm.
survival purposes, you better focus on danger and what's risking you and what's negative. If there's a flower to my right and a tiger to my left, and I'm an ancient woman, I better focus on that tiger that comes to eat me and start running away. If I focus on the beautiful flower, I'm getting eaten up alive, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward 2022, almost 2023. I don't think there's a tiger that comes to eat me, but the mind is still very much focused on the negative. And so I'm finding that not just leaders, but everyone tends to go around correcting other people. So we correct our team members for everything they do wrong. We correct all the mistakes. But what happens when somebody actually does something amazing? Do we really take the time to tell them, you know what? And then in great detail, I've seen what you've done and I thought that was super good.
Mm.
um that's such an important thing when you talk about inspire. So that's the first key that you came up with, Stacy, for unlocking talent potential. What do you call inspire? How do leaders do that?
I think it's really telling a compelling story about the possibilities and the future. Another kind of common term for it is have a vision.
Yeah.
So, a less fancy way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, but really, then being out there and articulating that story and exciting people about the possibilities, and then kind of brings us to that second point, which is engaging,
Yeah.
and then engaging them in shaping the path forward to get there. Um, I've had the good fortune to work with leaders over time, and Bob Ben Moshe, unfortunately, has passed. People remember him, I think, more for the role that he played in turning around AIG. But I was with MetLife at the time when he became the CEO there.
Yep.
And he went around the nation, enlisting and dialoguing with the time, I think it was like 3,000 leaders in the company. And he told the story about what he imagined MetLife being and doing and becoming. At that
Yeah.
point, MetLife wasn't public, and enlisted them really invited them, because people were like, we have a new CEO, we're going public, to your point, like
Yeah.
tiger fear. And
Yeah.
he's like, no, 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 no. This is about us figuring out what we want to be. So
Yes.
imagine that, like figuring out what we want to be. And he painted the picture of the vision. So that, I think, is first and foremost, key. That's the first key. Inspire people.
So true. And I love there's a resilience aspect to it too, because especially as people struggle through challenges, and life is challenging as a professional, as a person, when you have that vision into the future, which is such an important part of what a leader does, the everyday obstacles become much easier to deal with because you got your eyes on the vision, on the future. How powerful it is for a leader to create a vision that people get excited about. That's a huge part of a leader's role. And so, um, for those of us that have joined us and kind of feel that maybe they could do a better job when it comes to inspiring, maybe they can do a better job when it comes to vision. It's a growth process. Leadership is an ongoing growth process. You get better, and then you do better, and then you lead better, and then new challenges come, and then you have to get better again. What are three things somebody's listening to us and they say, you know what, I'm a good leader, but I do want to inspire more. I want to be that leader.
Mm.
What are three things that person needs to do tomorrow morning? They wake up, they start their workday, they say, I want to inspire my team and do better on that end. What should they do?
I've had people engage teams in this activity and do this for themselves. Imagine, fast forward 5 years from now, create the headline. What would the headline be about your thing, whatever that thing is, your
Yeah.
function, your team, your business? Even taking the time to reflect on that, that's always
Yeah.
a really good activity. Another question you could ask yourself is, what do I want to be known for?
Yeah.
What's the thing that I want to differentiate on? And the third thing, and this I think sometimes is challenging for folks, because as a leader, people feel like, I have to have the answer.
Yeah.
Go do a listening tour, right? Get close and comfy to the people out there that are serving your clients or customers, and ask them, what do you think is possible here? What would you like to see us do differently? And that conversation point or two isn't going to magically create the vision, but you'll get inspired and get a sense of possibility. And then you can kind of take that back and reflect. or have a visioning session with your team, right?
Yeah.
With your management team. So I found that, those things, there's not like a one way or a magic way, but really being intentional and providing yourself and your team the space to think about it is important.
And I love what you said, Stacy, about take the time to reflect, because I feel that this is a huge differentiator for leaders to be proactive in their choices rather than reactive. And it's a huge topic because when you proactively take the time to reflect and clarify things with yourself, that's very challenging for some leaders to do, considering the amount of burnout that is out there these days. And that burnout, one of the biggest symptoms, the most prominent symptoms of burnout, is the inability to do exactly that. To You're being very reactive. I'm so glad that you pointed out how important it is to take the time to sit and think and reflect and clarify and strategize. So if you're a leader and you're listening to Stacy and I right now, and you're wondering what is the first thing that you should do, I think you should do exactly that. Get up tomorrow morning and make the time for yourself to sit back in your seat rather than being reactive, and think, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do this better? How are you going to get the clarity of vision? How are you going to do things differently as a leader to inspire more? And then we're not going to look at scary, very concerning statistics on how many people leave the job, how many people are disengaged, all these things. In your own microcosmos of, just your team, you can do so much better just by doing that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And so let's say, okay, I'm going to put myself in those shoes. I'm a leader. I want to do better. I want to inspire my team more. I got up. It's the next day. I listened to Stacy and Michelle's LinkedIn Live, and then I strategized with myself, and I thought, how can I inspire better? What do I do with my thoughts? Okay. I'm thinking, okay, I can have what? Give me examples of some things that you've done that worked really well with your team to inspire better. What works and what doesn't work?
Mm. There's something called an empathy map. It's part of like design thinking, kind of a buzz
Mhm,
term, hot
mhm.
kind of topic these days. But one thing that works really well is taking the time. You could do it with yourself or with your team is even better. What would each of your stakeholders, think, do, say, feel,
Yeah,
right? If you
yeah,
were able to achieve that vision, what would customers be saying about you? What would they be thinking? What would they be doing? What would they be feeling? And that just gives you more material, if you will, to then say, all right, so that's kind of where what future state looks like, right? We have this vision, that's material, what the future state looks like. Then you kind of get into so how do we actually get there? What would need to be true in
yeah,
order for us to have those things come to fruition? Which, it's about engagement, right? So we talked about inspiration, then it's about engaging your team in that journey, in that process. And then, the term declare, sometimes people will go, that's not really like a leader's role, right? We're kind of shifting leaders to be less command and control. But I will tell you that certain points leaders need to declare. They need to declare, priorities, as an example, right? This
yes,
day and age, complexity and, the size and scope of what the teams are focused on, the ambiguity in the market. At a certain point, you have to kind of like step back and declare for your team, these, this is what we're going after, this is what good looks like, these are the priorities. So, and know those moments, right? It's kind of a yin and a yang of asking and then declaring, asking and then
yeah,
declaring,
yeah.
so that you're engaging your team along the way, but you're also knowing when, that point comes where you need to put a stake in the ground and help say, this is the path we're going after.
I love that. And it's so important because it's declare and then be clear about it. You know,
Yes.
It's such an important part of leadership, because a lot of times, I would encounter teams that would say we don't have that clarity from leadership. We're not sure what the rules are, what the roles are. There's so much change going on in, whatever industry it is, and we, it makes us more burned out. It makes us more stressed out. So would you agree with me that the best gift that a leader can give their team, it's exactly what you said, it's declare. The best gift you can give your team is tell them what is expected, when do
Yeah.
you, how to succeed, how to do what you want them to do.
Yes, yes. Internally at Citizens, sometimes we use the term guardrails,
Yeah.
right? So you don't
Yeah.
want to be, a micro manager or micro leader and kind of
Yeah.
get into every little bit. But when your team is clear what the vision is, clear where you're headed, and then they have those guardrails of, what is expected and what must be true, then they can really soar and, and go fast, right? So, but if it's too big and too broad and there's not a sense as to what those guardrails are,
Yeah.
be a lot of time, effort, and energy of people kind of, swirling. So
Yes.
you have to know when to be really clear and specific on things too.
And if you don't know, say that you don't know. That's
Yep.
also a form of clarity. You don't know, you don't know. That's fine. But it's so much wasted energy and so much anxiety when people just try to guess what is going on, what do you expect, what's happening, what's most important at any given time, what are the priorities in terms of the team or the organization, because there's just so much going on. So this is so important. Talk to me about ask. What is ask?
Mm, the ask piece I love because I always think about it in two ways. Ask yourself,
Mhm.
and that's that whole reflection piece. One of the questions that I found the leaders that are really successful, and by successful, I don't mean, successful in terms of like even conquering or taking over the world in that way, but they're successful in their own skin and in their own right, is they ask themselves, what is the thing in my position that I'm uniquely able to do?
Love it.
Sometimes, we will use the term flying at the right altitude too to
Yeah,
kind of describe that. So asking yourself, where can I add the most value? Because then
I
you're
love
being
that.
intentional about how you're spending your time, what role you can play. Um, and then, the converse of that, or kind of goes hand in hand, is asking your team then, how is it going? What's getting in the way? How am I doing? How
Yeah,
can I help you more?
yeah.
And that dialogue with yourself and with your team is just, it's evergreen. It's something that you do along the way, and it informs both, for you where you're spending your time, and then it helps kind of feed back up to the strategy of how are we doing, where are we headed, what do we need to shift, what do we need to change. So the questions really are never ending. I see some
I see
comments
we have a
popping in here too.
comment. I love
Yeah.
that. I like that you brought that up. Leadership means accountability. So true. Your team needs to know where they're at, what they're doing as a team, the vision and path. And your name
Mhm.
is Mosunda. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. I love that comment. Stacy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the term that sometimes I hear people say is, leadership comes with great responsibility.
Yeah,
It comes with great responsibility. It's
great
an honor
responsibility.
and it's a privilege, and you have to really be intentional about it. Is kind of the word I keep coming back to. So
Yeah.
thanks for that comment.
I love that comment. And yes, it does come with a moral responsibility. I mean, we're talking about leading talent, leading people, and people look up to the leader. And we talked about inspiring, and I just want to add one more component to it before we go on to the fourth key. Um, that has to do with the inspiring part with the moral responsibility. I feel that leaders have to do their best at leadership. And yes, you're right, Musonda, to keep themselves accountable as possible, to be their best. Yes, leadership does come with a great amount of moral responsibility that I feel like extends beyond the organization. It's a process of, we just talked about it, Stacy, it's a process of becoming.
Mm.
Right? Becoming better as a person, becoming better as a leader, having more, because the challenges are not, we all kept waiting for the challenges to go away. And so there's going to be a public announcement. The pandemic is over. The market is back to being,
Hmm.
normal, and life is good again. That's not happening. So, the challenges are our reminder to be better.
Yeah. And to coin a phrase that you use, to always continue to become,
Yes. See
right?
how much we align with
Yeah.
Stacey, I can't. I just can't. We agree on this. We agree on this so much because yes, it is about becoming. But here's the treat, of this process of becoming. It makes you better in other areas of your life too. So if you're feeling challenged as a leader, your quest for, finding the tools that you need, it's ultimately when you get the tools that you need, and listening to us is one way. And then there are books out there and articles and podcasts. There's a lot of information out there for leaders that seek knowledge. How do I make my people skills better? How do I declare better, get clearer in my communications? How do I inspire my team better? How do I ask the right questions? How do I become more mindful when I ask questions? So all those things, tons of resources out there for leaders that are seeking them. The good news is it will make you better because you're going to start asking your kids questions, and you're going to start asking people around you questions and being curious. You're going to inspire people differently in other areas of your life. It's a great process of becoming. It's a privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was an HBR article that the title was something to the effect of, forget bravado, be
Yeah.
vulnerable,
Yeah.
and really, accepting, admitting, and realizing that part of being a leader is not having the answers,
Yeah.
and really being able to show others that you're in this with them, right? You
Yeah.
might have kind of that certain position on the org chart, but you don't have all of the answers. And you really are also just going through and figuring things out in the same way that they are, both professionally, personally. And the leaders that I've seen who you know end up getting teams to really thrive are those where they're connecting with their teams personally, and are vulnerable, and are human
Yeah.
to their teams.
Yes, it's so important. And back to what we said before, Stacy, where leaders need to take care of their own burnout so that they have the length of breath to do this. So, leaders, if you need to, go do something that is self-care, by all means consider it part of your leadership, because you cannot be a very impactful leader when you are completely burned out. And so many leaders are, and they don't realize how burned out they are. Being burnout is like drunk driving. You think
Mm.
you're fine, but you're not fine, because you don't have the emotional budget, and you're more edgy, and you have less attention. So self-care is a
Mm.
must for leaders. Every time you do something nice for yourself, believe me, that's part of your job. It's important for leaders to do that. You cannot be an effective leader when you are reactive and burned out and, running around like a headless, chicken sort of thing. Leaders need to be able to sit back in their seat and strategize and be in a good head space. That's so important. Stacey, talk to me about the fourth key, which is enable. I'm really curious about that one.
Oh, I love this one. So this is about really supporting people's success for today as
Yeah,
well as for tomorrow, which
I
kind of
love it.
brings me back to that 78% stat, which is the career opportunities. So
Yeah,
listen, people don't show up to work every day to not do a good job, right?
yeah,
They want to do their best, and bring their best to the position that they have.
yeah,
And they also want to know that the position that they're in really has opportunity for what goodness looks like for them. And I say that very carefully because sometimes we make assumptions as managers or leaders. Well, if I engage them in a conversation about what's important to them, they're going to tell me they want to be promoted, or they're going to tell me they want, the next position up, or they're don't make assumptions around those things. Have the dialogue and conversation to connect and understand and really enable goodness for them.
Yeah. So
Sometimes
important.
I know a lot of, a lot of colleagues over time that I've gotten to know where they didn't want more responsibility.
Mm,
What was goodness for them was opportunities to really get to know one another and form strong bonds.
yeah.
And so they wanted the ability to get to know people, to spend time, to really make a difference in where they were, but they weren't ready for the next thing. And you
Yes.
have to also make that okay for people too, to be able to have that conversation and dialogue with you. So, really supporting people and enabling their success today, as well as enabling their success for the future. There's a ton of studies also out there now about, another McKinsey study, 87% of organizations now are saying that they have significant upskilling to do to quote unquote future proof their organizations for what's
Yes.
going to be required.
Stacey,
That's
we're
alarming.
like, that's a scary. That's
Yeah.
a big number.
Yeah. And we're all human, and part of being human is growing.
Yeah.
So guess what? If you put those two together, colleagues want to grow and learn.
Yeah.
So really providing them the opportunity to grow and learn in the seat they're in, both from experience, and all jobs, really no jobs are static anymore. So,
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll kind of say, oh, well, we've colleagues, and they need more training, or they need more this or more that. Maybe yes, but a lot of times helping colleagues understand that as your jobs are changing, you're learning and growing too. And it's not just about going to the next class, but it's
Yeah.
about really taking the opportunity to really embrace what's happening in your seat, in your
Yeah.
virtual seat, if you will,
Yeah.
and recognizing those moments of learning and growth, and managers really coaching around that too, to kind of draw out those learnings, and helping employees make the connection to, you really are gaining experiences, and you're gaining skills. It's not
Yes.
about that next position on the chart, if you will.
I agree with you so much. And it's that empowerment. And guys, if you have any questions, if you want to say anything about empowerment, about enabling, about the best things that we can do as leaders, drop them in the chat, and Stacey and I will respond to them, and we'll answer any questions or respond to any comments that you have. So join us and drop your comments in the chat. Um, that empowerment piece,
Mhm.
the enable key, that is so important, where on the one hand we talk about so many problems with retention, so many problems with just keeping engaging employees, keeping the employees. A lot of the millennials are very quick. I have a statistics here about millennials. 91% of millennials, which is about a third of the current workforce, will stay in their jobs for fewer than 3 years. So millennials leave very, very quickly. What do you think, when we look at what we're saying about enabling and asking, and
Mm.
and being present and intentional and clear and inspiring? What is your thought on this on a multi-generational level? I mean, we're working with different generations. The millennials are certainly challenging in terms of retention. What are your thoughts on this for leaders?
I think that sometimes folks really don't have a sense, meaning colleagues in the seats don't have a sense as to what what path could be for them.
Yeah.
And so again, it comes back to really having those conversations and understanding and knowing. And I think also, as leaders who maybe grew up in a different generation, I think that it's accepting that colleagues might want to go explore different things. And I say you support their success, you provide them with opportunity for honest, transparent dialogue with you, and you make connections for them internally. And guess what, sometimes they say, you know what, I just got to see what else is out there. I want to go do this, I want to go do that. And I think that's okay. And you support their success as they exit the company too. There's a phenomenon that's happened too with a lot of colleagues who have left, saying they wish they didn't, during the pandemic in particular, they wish they didn't leave their current organization because
Mhm.
they were chasing comp, or they were chasing this, and they realized what they missed about where they were.
Yeah.
So having conversations, sometimes the term is like a stay conversation,
Yeah.
having conversation with a colleague to say, what's the one thing that keeps you here, or what's the one thing that you wish we could change.
Yes. Yes.
Powerful.
So powerful. And we have a LinkedIn user, and we don't know your name, but somebody here is saying, I think people leaving after less than 3 years is directly tied to the perception of career advancement. And that ties directly into what you're saying, Stacy. And I love what you're saying about the power of asking simple questions. So just by asking someone alone, what would you like to see happening? How would you like to grow? What are your goals? What are you hoping to do? How are you doing? How are you
Mhm.
feeling? How is this working out for you? I think it's going to go a long, long way in retention. And we have another LinkedIn user here that says, "I like the concept of constantly recruiting your current talent." What do you think
Mm.
about that, Steve? I love that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point. There's a lot of comments in the press now around this whole like notion of like quiet quitting, and
Yeah,
is that real? Is that actually happening?
yeah,
Um I think it's also recognizing that people are human, and sometimes they're kind of in a mode where they're upshifting, and sometimes they're in a mode where they're downshifting, or they are a little bit in neutral.
yeah,
And I think it's a recognizing that's okay too. What you want to do is have that trusting relationship where you can really have an understanding as to where somebody is, what's important to them, what does goodness look like. And you really want colleagues who are always willing to put in that extra effort.
yeah.
I think
It's
more and
so
more, especially through the
yeah,
pandemic, people have been, putting in that extra effort, and they also want, by and large, to be able to have boundaries too with the organization. So,
yes,
it can't be, 150% 24/7, and sometimes it is that, and sometimes it's not that. But I hope this term "quiet quitting"
mm,
goes away.
yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, you kind of are with these or so many organizations. What's your sense of how real that is, and if that's a fair kind of characterization of what's happening?
Oh, Stacey, I have a lot to say about quiet quitting. I have, you got me going. I have to keep it short. But before that, I want to respond to Susan here, to Suzanne. Suzanne says, state meetings are fabulous.
Mm.
What do you think, Stacey?
Anytime I've done that kind of conversation, me, others, you learn something that
Yes.
you didn't know,
Yes.
right? And what your assumptions about, like, I better not have this conversation because they're going to want X.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 are wrong, you know? So avoiding the conversation is always an awful idea. Having the conversation, while sometimes it can be scary and intimidating, is always an awesome idea, because you learn something.
I love that so much. And it's so true because a lot of leaders are avoiding what I call courageous conversations, right? Like challenging conversations we don't want to have. And a lot of times these conversations go completely differently than what you assumed. It's that assuming about other people a lot of times that stands in the way of great leadership. Assume
Hmm.
nothing. We don't know anything about other people and why they go through what they go through. So assume nothing. But you've asked me about quiet quitting, and I have to say something about this
Yeah,
because this
yeah.
is driving
I
me
knew
nuts.
you would. I knew you
Okay,
would.
you got me going. Okay, here's the problem with quiet quitting. Okay, whoever's into quiet quitting these days, you're quitting on yourself. Okay. Because if you want to quiet quit at your job and do the minimum, by all means, do your thing. You're either, they'll either keep you or they won't keep you. They'll like you, they won't like you, promote you, not, it doesn't matter. But the mindset of quiet quitting is driving me nuts because I'm all about how do you become better as a person? And to me, it's all interrelated, right? You can't say that this is your persona only in the workplace, and then you have a completely different persona in your personal life. I don't believe in this. You're the same person. You handle relationships the same way. You handle your life the same way. And the discipline and the standards are across the board. That's how you run your life. So you run your health that way. You run your money that way. You run your relationships that way. And if you think that you can quiet quit in only one aspect of your life and thrive in the others, let me tell you, that's not how it works. You're literally quitting on yourself. And that, Stacey, that scares me because I would like to see people growing and getting new tools. And, I always say you can't prevent the snowstorms, but you can get, a great shovel. I mean, you can get better tools. You can hire someone, whatever it is that you do. But you can't prevent the snowstorm. So the quiet quitting is going to bite you back. And I don't like it for any of you. I think it stands in the way of what we call personal development, personal growth. I'm done ranting. What do you think?
Right. It's also, why do that to yourself too?
Yeah. You don't like your job
where you really can soar and thrive and be all in,
Yeah. Especially in today's market, there are so many options. If you're really unhappy, actively look for other options, but do not quit on yourself. And we have a comment here from a LinkedIn user. I think leaders are overusing quiet quitting when people are really downshifting for the time being. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I agree with
said.
that.
That's what I was
That's
what I was trying to say before.
Yeah.
People can't go 150% and they're sort of trying to equalize, get more equilibrium. So
yeah. And Musonda is saying corporate cowardness. I don't I mean, it's like we have to stop being, let's put it this way. We have to stop being afraid.
yeah.
Okay. Let's put it this way. In corporate and in life, I feel that fear, is very debilitating. So it's that fear of having the difficult conversations in our lives, or the fear of really thinking things through and finding out for ourselves, are we in the right place? Are we growing, as a person? But once again, I'm saying you cannot quit in order to grow. That's not how it works. If you're looking to grow as a person, seek growth where you are. That's the best scenario. And if not, find a place that will support that. And RJ Ferguson is agreeing with me. I'm glad. I think you'll find there's a majority of people that agree with you. I'm glad because listen, I really try to, be very open-minded to a lot of new trends. I'm having a very hard time with quiet quitting. It's just, I just want to go out there and say, this is really bad. And we have a LinkedIn user that says quiet quitting versus avoiding burnout. Both were mentioned, and the key is balance. Okay, so now let's be challenged, Stacey, because this is challenging. Quiet quitting versus avoiding burnout. Why do they conflict? I don't see the conflict. Avoiding burnout has to do with self-care, right? To avoid burnout, you have to manage your time better, your priorities better, and to do self-care. 3 things: time, priorities, self-care. Quiet quitting is literally about, it doesn't matter if you're burnout or not, you're just going to give up on your moral responsibility at your job or on yourself. What do you
do the minimum?
think?
Yeah, you do the minimum. And I think that as a leader, if you set the right tone and environment and have those trusting relationships, then hopefully you have a team who can then have a dialogue with you to say, like, I'm maxed out here.
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
right, like I'm maxed out here. I'm taking, I'm taking some time. I'm going to take, Friday afternoon off, um, or to let you know, hey, I got a lot going on.
Yeah.
I got a lot going on, and I'm doing the best I can right now. Right?
Yeah.
Like, how
Yeah.
how how
Well,
amazing is that for
what's
somebody
wrong
to
with
say,
that?
like, what's wrong with that? I'm doing the best I
Yeah.
can right now.
Yeah, yeah. And that leads us to your fifth key that I love, which is connect. But before that, I'll read our LinkedIn users' comments. Some folks may be trying to reduce burnout. Oh, this is so good. Some folks may be trying to reduce burnout through downshifting as
Mm,
opposed to quiet quitting. Are folks really quiet quitting? How do we know this? Well, I think we know this from the very many TikTok clips and reels that basically people say, "Hey, I'm quiet quitting," and that's just the thing to do. And here is how I'm quiet quitting. Almost like a glorification of the quiet quitting, which is
mhm,
what gets me. It's not when people quiet quit because they're just not able to. Because when you're really burned out, you're going to find that you're wasting time and you're scrolling and you're not efficient and you got nothing to give. You're burned out. You're going to give the very minimum that you have to do at your workplace. You don't have the mental budget to be creative, innovative. But,
mhm,
you're just burned out. So that's a given. That's not a choice. Whereas quiet quitting is the glorification of uh, of doing the minimum. And we have a LinkedIn user that says TikTok really. Yes, TikTok is a major social media tool for millennials and Gen Z, which are a significant part of the workforce. And there's nothing there's nothing we could do about that. And some older folks too. I do go on it sometimes. Um, Come on, I also have an account. I do go on it sometimes. It numbs your brain, but it is what it is. Michelle, this is good. Someone said I had a conversation yesterday with someone that says the companies are asking for too many skills, and
mhm.
that is why they quit. I think it's the lack of investment in personal development. Which is exactly why Stacy and I are here today, and this is exactly what we're talking about. People are not reflective on their career goals. I love that. And we have a LinkedIn user that says the workplace is changing. People are no longer accepting the rat race culture. That's so
Mhm.
true. We
Yeah,
expect balance and being able to leave work at work. I agree with that so much, and I actually like that trend. What do you think, Stacy?
absolutely. And what we're finding is that the leaders who are, what we say, like, leading the change you want in the org, right? So you want a healthy org, you want your team to be healthy, because healthy individuals really are giving their best, right? How can you not
Yes.
give your best? To your point, like, burnout isn't a choice.
Yeah.
So I find that the leaders who are intentionally role modeling
Yes.
boundaries and role modeling what it looks like to say, I'm taking PTO, paid time off is the term we use, and I'm disconnecting.
Yes. And RJ Ferguson says, learn to work to live versus living to work.
Mhm.
I could not agree with that more because when we talk, somebody said balance before. It is, we say work life balance. And then you and I talked, Stacey, about how everything today is sort of like blended in, work and life and everything. But back to my rant before about back to back to my rant before about quiet quitting. This is actually the way to go, to live fully and to, not live to work, but work to live, and then go back to the workplace and feel that you're appreciated, that you're validated, that you are growing, that you are becoming. That is the challenge of leaders these days. So, Stacey, talk to me about the fifth key, which is connect. Talk to me because I love that one and I love the power of connection. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I mean, I look at that on two levels too. One of them is the personal level. So what are you doing to connect to your team,
Yeah.
people who are on your team, connect to partners, understanding really what's important to your peers,
Yeah.
connecting to create that shared agenda. And then I also think, with leadership comes great responsibility. And the
Yeah.
thing that we talked about before around really operating at the right altitude. When you're in a leadership position, typically you have that vantage point to see things that others on your team don't see.
Yeah.
So how do you then connect the dots for people and really help make those non-obvious connections, so that people are kind of picking their heads up a little bit more, or
Yeah.
looking across and are saying like, wow, well, if we just connected this to that, we'd have so much greater impact on our customers or on our colleagues, if you're working in a role that is more colleague facing. And so I think the leader has the opportunity to both connect to people personally, connect to their peers, to create that shared agenda, and then have that vantage point to make connections that maybe others don't naturally see. It sounds like a lot, and you're kind of, always toggling between those things. But if you think about it, it kind of goes together. If you're connecting with people personally,
Mhm.
then you have the opportunity to understand what's happening and what's important to them, which then you can create that shared agenda and get to know things on a more authentic level, that then helps you make business connections too.
I love that so much. And I just want to add one more layer to it, connect to yourself. Because
Mm,
if you're burned out, if you don't have the time to think, to strategize, to look at the way you're doing things and think how to be more mindful, more intentional, then you're missing out. So I, you know, by all means, this is the time for leaders to take a step back, sit back, think, what do I need to do for my own mental budget? What do I need to do to connect better with my team? What do I need to do better to inspire more, to be authentic? That one is for you, Stacy, to be authentic. I love that. Okay, if somebody brought it up and it was directed to Stacy, so now Stacy's going to respond to that. Talk to me about authenticity.
I think authenticity is has never been more important.
Oh, so true.
It's never been more important, right? You cannot be in a leadership position these days without being authentic to who you are. And if you're not, I think colleagues and your teams look at you, and you aren't real to
Yeah.
them.
It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And, we call that mirroring, right? In psychology, where, I had my daughter come back from school one time and she said, oh, mommy, the teacher said, she was about 12 at the time. Now she's 14, my youngest. She said, Musunda, I like that too, what Stacy said. She said, the teacher said, oh, guys, you can come to me anytime. And the teacher, for that matter, is a leader, right? In the classroom. And my daughter says, I'm never going to her, mommy, because we just don't have that kind of relationship. So why would I go to her?
Mm.
And so I keep going back to that, thinking how many leaders say, oh, I have an open door policy, but they don't really create that relationship. So this is an opportunity for leaders to reflect on that. If you're not authentic, in your attempt to connect with your team, to ask questions, to inspire, to do all the things around the 5 keys that we talked about today, they're not going to come to you. You don't really have genuinely an open door policy because you're not creating that dynamic. So, Stacey, I could talk to you literally for hours. This would end up being the longest LinkedIn Live in the history of all LinkedIn Lives, but we do need to wrap up. I do want to ask you at the end of it all, what would be your most important advice for
Mm.
any leader that is listening to us? What's the most important takeaway that you want them to take from this conversation? Something to think about that will make their lives better, their teams better, today or tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's Saturday, so today or Monday.
Yeah, we don't want.
Yeah,
We're trying to set
we don't
boundaries.
want the Saturday. No.
Um, you know what, Michelle, came to mind as you said that, and we didn't
Yeah.
pre-rehearse this. The There's a quote, Maya Angelou quote, who was just, poetic in her own right. But people will not remember what you said or what you did.
Yes.
They'll remember how you made them feel. I, I think that at the end of the day, it's what it's about, right?
Yes.
Inspiration is about making them energized and excited about the future, connecting with people authentically, getting to know them personally, asking questions. I mean, all of, those 5 keys that we talked about really is about kind of, harnessing the emotional power that,
Yes.
within yourself and with your teams. And at the end of the day, if they look back at working with you, um, and have that emotional connection in terms of the environment you created, to your point, and really the feeling that you left them with, then you've succeeded as a leader.
And with those words, thank you to everyone who joined us today. This is so inspiring and helpful, and a lot for all of us to think about. Stacey Aries, Head of Talent Management at Citizens Bank, thank you so much for your wisdom today and for spending some time with me. And thank you so much to everyone that joined. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy and rest, work-life balance. And when you get back to work on Monday, remember your incredible moral responsibility as a leader. And I hope you reflect back to Stacey Aries' 5 keys. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Michelle.